I am Irene, currently 34 weeks pregnant. I've just started my maternity leave and am truly living a maternity life. Our 2-room rental apartment is gradually filling up with baby supplies. Each new addition makes me more eager to meet the tiny life growing inside me. While slowly making coffee, I called out to my husband Ben, who was diligently assembling the baby crib, following the instructions. Let's take a break. I prepared black coffee for Ben and decaffeinated coffee for myself. I also opened a tin of cookies we had received earlier.
It smells good.
Right? I grinded the beans today. I really miss having good coffee and alcohol. It's still a long way until I finish breastfeeding.
You're getting ahead of yourself. The baby isn't even born yet.
Ben came over laughing to drink his coffee. Is it difficult? I insisted on a round type, but maybe a regular square one would have been better.
Not at all. It's cute, and since furniture is so visible, it's better not to buy something you don't like.
We are spending a leisurely Saturday afternoon, realizing these moments will become scarce, making them feel exceptionally special and luxurious.
Delicious. What are these cookies?
Ben, a connoisseur of Western sweets, seems to immediately discern the subtle differences in the butter used in the cookies. I smiled at his surprised and delighted expression. You like them? Sophie brought them as a souvenir from her trip to Paris last week. They're from a famous shop.
Really? Sophie always has good taste in gifts. Oh, let's ask her for a recommendation for our anniversary dinner. It'll be our last fancy dinner as a couple before the baby arrives.
Got it. But don't eat too much, or you'll gain weight. I said this with a smile, watching Ben continue to eat the cookies. Sophie has been her childhood friend for over 20 years, always looking out for me, often joking, "It's nerve-wracking watching you, Irene." After college, I joined a company but quit within a year due to a mismatch. At that time, Sophie offered me a job at her father's company. Sophie's father runs a motorcycle-related business from a prefabricated office on their property. Grateful for the offer, I have been working there since. Sophie's father, considering my maternity leave and return to work, surprised me with his understanding and flexibility. Really? Are you sure? You'll find a replacement, right?
If you would come back, we'll hire a part-time worker for the duration. Work is easier with you around, and we don't have to be on our toes. Of course, if you want to focus on childcare, that's fine too.
Working for a small company, I never expected such consideration and had intended to resign. I felt both joy and a sense of guilt, but I immediately responded, "I'll come back, definitely." When I told Ben, he was happy, saying,
"That's a big financial relief."
So having finished work last weekend, I am now enjoying a relaxed maternity life starting this week. What should I do every day until the baby is born?
Just relax. I hear it's tough after giving birth.
Yeah, you're right. I can't quite imagine it yet. What will it feel like? But staying at home this week has already bored me. We got most of the baby stuff already, so there's no reason to go out except to the hospital.
I heard walking is good. It might be tough to walk outside in January, so how about window shopping at the mall?
Convinced by Ben's suggestion, I decided to visit the shopping mall for a walk starting next week. That day, feeling bored with the usual mall, I decided to try a larger mall 2 stations away. As I reached full-term pregnancy, my belly became heavier, so I strolled around the mall, then taking breaks on benches. Despite this, being in a new mall lifted my spirits. Just as I was about to stand up, I suddenly spotted Sophie. Sophie works at a beauty salon and usually has weekdays off. I was delighted to see her and thought of inviting her to a cafe, so I called out to her. "Hey, Sophie!" Sophie, seemingly confused about where the voice was coming from, didn't notice me and, with a wondering face, started walking again. As I supported my heavy belly and tried to follow her, I heard a familiar voice from behind saying,
"Sophia, wait up,"
and saw the person hurry past me. I stood still, watching the man's back as he passed. The person approached Sophie was none other than Ben. Shocked, I gasped, turned around, and hastily hid my face. "You're late, Ben."
"Sorry, got held up at a client's." Had an appointment, but things didn't go as planned.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I can't stay long. I have to get back soon. What do you want to do?
Geez, let's just have lunch together today. Then Sophie took Ben's hand, intertwining her fingers with his, and they started walking towards the escalator. Hidden, I watched them, feeling like I was in a nightmare. I wondered what was happening. There must be a reason. Maybe Ben is asking for advice from Sophie to surprise me with a gift. But such hope felt empty. There's no other way to interpret a married man walking like a couple with another woman. Moreover, Ben never called Sophie Sophia when he was with me. Faced with this unintended reality, I had no choice but to accept and acknowledge that they were having an affair. I stood there, dazed, for a while, but lacking the courage to delve further into their relationship, I decided to return home, head bowed. Back home, sitting on the sofa, I could feel my heartbeat quickening and gradually felt anger rising towards Ben. How could this happen? Why? It seemed utterly inconceivable. With my delivery approaching, I wondered why such a thing was happening. Why with my best friend? Why with someone our families are close with? Why with the daughter of the owner of the company I work for? Uncovering the truth about Ben and Sophie's affair meant potentially losing my husband, best friend, and job all at once. Feeling my lips tremble, unable to contain my anger, I raised my voice. "Why are you doing this? Don't make a fool of me," and threw a cushion to the floor. My blood pressure rose and I felt blood rushing to my head. I took deep breaths to calm myself down. Trying to pick up the cushion, my protruding belly got in the way. Feeling the baby inside, I apologized in my heart and tears started to fall. I can't forgive this betrayal. Being at home started to feel unbearable. I didn't know how to face Ben when he returned, and I wanted to avoid letting him realize that I knew about their relationship. After crying a lot, I took a shower, fixed my makeup, and managed to compose myself. Although I couldn't hide the swelling from crying, I prepared dinner and tried my best to greet Ben as usual.
I'm home.
As usual, Ben returns home, whistling while washing his hands, and seems in a good mood from the smell of dinner. He inquires about my day, but my gaze towards Ben is cold.
Did you go to the shopping mall again today?
Yes, it was warm enough that I didn't need a coat. Have to walk for the baby's sake.
Are your eyes swollen?
Yes. After I got home, I ate an egg, and my eyes started itching. I rubbed them hard. It's strange because I'm not allergic to eggs. I smoothly delivered the prepared excuse.
Really? Maybe it's a change due to pregnancy. We should be careful. Let's avoid eggs for a while.
Yes, let's do that. Relieved that I've managed to deceive him, I kept preparing dinner.
Oh, right. Did you ask Sophie about the restaurant for our dinner? We should book it early.
When Ben casually mentions Sophie, I feel a pang in my heart. Maybe we should skip dinner.
Why?
My eyes suddenly swelled up today. I'm afraid something might happen at the restaurant.
I see. I was looking forward to our last date, but okay. Your health is more important.
Internally seething with anger, I clench my fists under the table and restrain my emotions. After dinner, Ben sits on the living room sofa and starts playing games as usual. While cleaning up in the kitchen, I glare at his back with anger, but Ben, engrossed in his game, doesn't notice my gaze. For several days, my heart was unsettled with anger and sadness, but I gradually became calmer. I need to think about the future for this child. Should the child grow up not knowing its father, or maybe it's better not to have such a terrible father from the start. I choose the latter. Once resolved, I immersed myself in gathering evidence of Ben and Sophie's affair. I was able to easily access Ben's credit card statements from his computer, revealing long-term infidelity. Until the day I saw them together at the mall, I had never even considered the possibility that Ben was having an affair. However, after seeing the credit card statements, it became clear that he had been cheating for quite a long time. Purchases at women's brand stores and payments at famous restaurants I've never visited with him are recorded. It turns out Ben booked a flight and hotel in Paris for the same period Sophie was traveling there. He said he had a business trip, but he was actually on an affair trip with my childhood friend. They probably chose the cookies together as a souvenir, and Ben pretended to see it for the first time and ate it in front of me, feigning excitement. Since Ben and I kept separate finances after marriage, I was unaware of his spending. Finding Ben's bank book, I discovered there are no savings. Trust in a person can vanish in an instant. Once the crack appears, hidden truths rapidly surface, making me realize how easily I was deceived. He's the worst. Any remaining affection or attachment fades away. The physical evidence seems sufficient. What's left is to capture photographic evidence of the two together. Once the baby is born, I won't be able to move freely. I need to settle this before then.
I have a business trip next week.
Where? Are you staying overnight?
I have to go to our San Diego branch.
But that's our due date. I heard first births can be delayed, but I'm worried.
It's just for one night. It's work. I have to go. If anything happens, I'll come back right away.
When Ben mentioned his business trip upon returning home, I couldn't hide my surprise. I already knew that the destination wasn't really San Diego. I had seen the credit card history recently and found a booking for a flight and hotel for next week. The hotel's name included LA. Ben's company has a branch in LA. At first, I thought it might be a real business trip, but when he said it was to San Diego, I knew for sure it was a lie. Can't you do something about it? I don't want to be alone.
But we don't know if the birth isn't necessarily going to be on that exact day.
The fact that he planned a trip with his mistress during my due date week left me more than angry. I was dumbfounded. He probably doesn't love me anymore. I felt like crying out of frustration, but Ben, mistaking my tears for anxiety, embraced me and said with unwarranted confidence,
"It's okay. I'll come to you even in the middle of the night if anything happens."
Feeling nauseous just from Ben coming closer, I gently pushed him away and said, "You're right. You can't do anything because it's work. Sorry for bothering you," and kept my distance. Next week, I'll have the evidence. Hoping not to go into labor, I wanted to get proof of his infidelity during his trip. The most important thing is to safely deliver the baby, but I desperately want evidence of them together, no matter what happens. Next week arrived, my belly still large, and the day of Ben's fake business trip. Ben was preparing his suitcase. When I commented, "You seem excited for a business trip," he became irritated and snapped,
"No way. I'm going for work. It's not fun."
I really wanted to follow him and catch him in the act, but it was impossible in my condition, so I decided to ask my brother for help. After telling him everything, he was, of course, furious. My brother and Sophie's brother were classmates and still keep in touch. He agreed to wait at the airport, determined to do something about it. I left in my trustworthy brother's hands, but as Ben was leaving the house, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my belly. It hurts.
"Oh, are you okay?"
At first, I thought it might be nothing, but then the pain intensified and I was certain. What should I do? I think I'm having contractions."
"You're kidding, right? Now when I'm about to leave?"
Ben looked at me, pale-faced.
"Are you okay? Should I call a taxi? Can you go alone?"
"Aren't you taking me to the hospital? Won't you stay with me?"
"But, right now
Didn't you say you'd come back if anything happened?" I stared at him, gripping his shirt, breathing shallowly. After a moment of silence, Ben said,
"Right. I'll get the car keys. Wait here,"
and went back to the living room. I wondered why it took so long just to get the keys. Finally, he returned and took my hand.
"Are you okay? Can you walk?"
"I can walk, but it hurts." I got into the car, gritting my teeth, and Ben drove off roughly. It takes 20 minutes to the hospital. I reclined the passenger seat to endure the labor pains. I had no chance to contact my brother. It was that intense. When we were 3 traffic lights away from the hospital, Ben's phone rang. He was startled, but then the light turned green, so he had to keep driving. The phone was connected to the car's Bluetooth, and Sophia was clearly displayed on the navigation screen. I gathered my remaining strength and pressed the call button on the navigation screen.
Hey, what are you doing?
Ben shouted, but I was quicker with my action. The next moment, I heard Sophie's voice, filled with anger. Ben, what the hell? I saw your text. What's this all about? I'm already on my way to the airport. Canceling on the day of is just too cruel. You could send Irene in an ambulance. There's still time if you come now. Hurry up and get here. Her words mixed with my physical and emotional pain, and I let out a silent scream. Ben quickly ended the call and continued driving in silence. Unbelievably, when he parked at the hospital entrance, he grabbed my arm and dragged me out of the passenger seat. His force caused me to fall to the ground.
You'll be fine now, right? Well, I'm off on my trip. Good luck with the birth.
With that, he got into the car, sped off, and disappeared. People in the rotary, shocked by the surreal scene, hurried into the hospital to call for help. I was in a state of shock and couldn't think of anything, but was quickly taken inside by the rushing nurses and doctors. Apparently, due to the mental shock, I lost consciousness and had to have a C-section. By the time I regained consciousness, everything was over. When I woke up, I saw the hospital's white ceiling blur into view, and Nurse Anna spoke to me. Irene? Irene Powell? Are you okay? Can you hear me? Yes, I can. You're in the hospital. Do you understand? Yes, I'm fine. Your baby was born safely. It's a boy. Hearing this, tears overflowed, and I covered my face with both hands. Who could have imagined such a birth? 2 months ago, I never thought things would turn out like this. The despair of knowing about Ben and Sophie's affair, and then this. Who would abandon their wife in labor to go on a trip with a mistress? Can such an act ever be forgiven? Nurse Anna, seeing my state, didn't say anything at first, but later returned to the room and let me hold the baby. Here, Mom, this is your baby. Holding the small, warm baby for the first time, I felt sorry for making such a man his father. A father like that is better for this child not to know him. I murmured this more to myself than to Nurse Anna. By the time Ben returned to the hospital, it had been about 6 hours since I regained consciousness. Ben, who had come to the maternity ward via the night corridor, was searching for me without asking at the nurse's station, checking the names at the entrance of each room. Nurse Anna, by chance, my attending nurse, who was coming out of another room, realized who he was looking for and approached him. Excuse me, are you looking for someone? Could you please write down the necessary details at the nurse's station?
Oh, I'm the husband of Irene Powell, who was admitted this morning.
Irene Powell's. I see. Please come this way. Nurse Anna guided Ben and seated him in the lobby chairs. Then she said to wait a moment and went back to the nurse's station before returning to the lobby.
Excuse me, my wife, Irene.
I'm sorry. She's gone.
What?
Ben showed a confused look at Nurse Anna's words. You won't be able to meet Irene and the baby here.
What do you mean?
Perhaps the shock of your actions outside the hospital. Irene kept conscious until the delivery room, but then she lost consciousness.
Just that? And the worst happens?
Just that, you say? What you did to Irene and the baby is what led to the worst situation.
Don't be rude. Just let me see Irene. I'm her husband.
As Ben grew increasingly angry, a man emerged from the elevator.
Are you Ben Powell? Huh? Who are you? My name is David Owen. I'm a lawyer. I've come to speak on behalf of Irene Powell.
The man offered a business card.
A lawyer?
Ben looked at the man in surprise.
Yes, Irene wishes to divorce you and has asked me to represent her. But you, just now, said Irene was dead. What does that mean?
Ben glared at Nurse Anna. I didn't say that. I said Irene is no longer here, in this hospital, meaning she is not in this hospital anymore. Perhaps Lawyer Owen can explain further?
Let me add something. You're Ben, right? The act of dragging your wife out of the car was caught on the hospital's surveillance camera. It was deemed a very dangerous act. So, protective measures were taken for Irene and her child. Therefore, we cannot disclose her new location. That's not true. I properly dropped her off at the hospital. How is that violence? I cut my trip short and came back right away because I was worried. Was it a business trip to LA? You must be tired. Yes, I rushed back from LA because I was worried about Irene. Where did I go wrong?
Lawyer Owen seemed to laugh involuntarily at Ben's words.
What are you laughing at, huh? Sorry, that was rude of me. I just didn't expect you to reveal your own lies so easily. Ben, you were supposed to be on a business trip to the San Diego branch today, right? That's what Irene told me.
Ben suddenly started sweating, realizing what he had said.
So it was a pleasure trip to LA, and your companion was Sophia Hansen, correct? Do you also remember the phone call from Sophia that Irene heard in the car? That was a wrong number. I was just as surprised as anyone when I heard the shouting. It's a misunderstanding on Irene's part. She was confused because of the labor. So you deny any relationship with Sophia and claim your innocence? Of course. Enough of this. Understood. I will convey that to Irene. We'll end our conversation here for today. Hey, you're not going to let me see Irene and my child?
Ben shouted in dissatisfaction, but Lawyer Owen bowed politely and left the hospital. Thank you. With Nurse Anna's help, I was able to transfer with my child. The next day, I expressed my gratitude to Lawyer Owen after hearing what had happened.
Ben denied everything, but we have your evidence, the hospital's surveillance footage, and decisive photos taken by your brother at the airport. It's impossible for him to deny or escape. It's confirmed. He wasn't in LA or San Diego for business.
Why did I fall in love with and marry such a man? I've finally seen him for what he is, I murmured while looking at my peacefully sleeping child in my arms.
You feel nothing for Ben is a good thing for you. It will save you from additional hurt when the divorce proceedings move forward. In my line of work, I've seen many divorces, but rarely someone like your husband.
I'm sorry.
Well, Ben will probably need to get a lawyer and take action in the future. For now, just wait quietly. We're preparing everything, so Irene, please focus on recovering after giving birth.
Thank you. I appreciate your continued support. The 4-person hospital room was full, and in the evening, new fathers who had finished work early came to visit, filling the room with happy laughter. That laughter was painful for me, and I wanted to move to a private room, but I told myself that such environments would be common in the future and endured it. The visit from my brother, who came just before visiting hours ended, was a great relief. I'm sorry, brother, to worry you. As soon as we met, I immediately apologized, and my brother shook his head gently.
So cute. Wow, so tiny.
While holding the baby, he looked at his new family member earnestly and told me,
Mom and Dad worked hard today. They're too tired to visit, but they said congratulations.
Thanks, I really appreciate it. I'll properly thank you once things settle down.
Don't mention it. It's no big deal.
After being informed by the nurse that visiting hours were over, my brother bowed slightly and left. On the day of my discharge, my brother, who had taken a day off, came to pick me up, and I decided to go to my late grandparents' vacant house. I chose this location, anticipating that Ben would likely come to my parents' house. Ben didn't know about my grandparents' house, so I decided to live there with my child. As soon as we arrived, my parents rushed out to hug me and cried for the hardship I endured. They were delighted to see their first grandchild.
We moved the baby's things and your belongings from the apartment as you instructed. If there's anything you forgot, we can go back and get it.
Thank you. I'll buy anything we need. Sorry for making you do a daytime escape. You must be tired. The room was tidied, and the dust was cleaned. It was clear that my parents had cleaned daily for me and their grandson, and I was filled with gratitude. Finally, having some time to think, I decided on the name Sean for my child. On the first weekend after my discharge, Ben, as expected, visited my parents' house. Instead of storming in angrily, he appeared with a trembling voice and a tearful face. My brother handled it, saying,
I won't let you see Irene.
Despite this, Ben stubbornly refused to leave the doorstep. After being threatened with a call to the police, Ben finally broke down in tears.
I've decided to break up with Sophia. I want to start over, like when we first dated. Please, forgive me.
My brother relented slightly and said,
I'll allow a phone call.
He then called my new number from his phone. My brother made sure the conversation was on speakerphone so he could hear.
Irene, I'm sorry. From now on, I'll cherish you and the baby. I want to start over.
Do you understand the gravity of what you've done? Throwing me out of the car put both me and the baby at risk? I will never forgive you. I have no intention of starting over. We should discuss this through lawyers for a divorce.
Think it over. Without you and after being left by Sophia, I have nothing. How am I supposed to live?
Wait, left by Sophie? You're not ending it on your own. She's leaving you, and that's why you're coming back to me? I'm appalled. It's inexcusable. Take responsibility for your actions. You're an adult. Goodbye and don't contact me again. I hung up the phone. My brother, realizing this man was hopeless, took the phone and said,
Last warning. Leave. If you're still here in 5 minutes, I'll call the police.
And went inside. Peeking out the window, I heard Ben had left with his shoulders slumped. Thanks to lawyer Owen's efficient handling, the divorce was finalized, and I could celebrate Sean's half-birthday with a fresh start. Ben's savings were not enough to pay the compensation, so his parents stepped in to cover it and paid me. Ben's parents made him sign a promissory note to repay a significant amount from his monthly salary promptly. Additionally, I also demanded compensation from Sophie. I owed Sophie a lot of gratitude. Additionally, her father had always cared for me since I was young, so I hesitated to demand the usual amount of compensation for her affair. However, it was significant that Sophie's father fully admitted his daughter's fault in the situation.
Heavens, that foolish daughter of mine. Irene, don't hold back. Get even. It might help change her for the better,
he said, tears of frustration in his eyes. Recently, Sophie contacted me through my brother, wanting to meet. I agreed to meet her at a child-friendly cafe near my parents' home. She looked thinner and more worn out than before. Sophie confessed that she had always been irritated with me since we were kids. You know, you were always slower than others, causing trouble for everyone, yet somehow you were always loved by everyone, and whenever you were in trouble, someone always came to your rescue. That really annoyed me. Even so, going after someone else's husband is wrong, isn't it? I always thought of supporting you first if you were in trouble. I wanted to repay you someday. Oh, really? Sophie briefly teared up, but held back her tears, responding dismissively. You can't do anything right and can't make proper decisions. That's why you chose such a sloppy man. Honestly, I had no romantic feelings for Ben. I just wanted to hurt you by tempting him. I'm not interested in such a stupid and shallow man. Actually, I think you should be thanking me for teaching you a lesson. Saying this, she placed an envelope filled with compensation on the table, muttered a small "sorry for the trouble," and left. Afterwards, Sophie moved out. I decided to resign from working at her father's company, finding it impossible to continue. Unable to find a spot in daycare, I planned to use my savings for a while, but hoped to find a job by the time Sean turns 1. Despite the painful experience of betrayal by my best friend and husband, Sophie's words made me realize my own complacency. Now I see this event as a trial for raising Sean. I'm determined to protect not just my own life, but also Sean's as we move forward.